Hello and welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm Big Italy 42 here talking about a very abbreviated slate tonight. Just 5 games, and we do have some good pitching options on the mound, which, as we know, have been hard to come by recently. Unfortunately, 2 of the better ones are facing off against each other. You've got Francisco Liriano against Lance Lynn. Needless to say, this is the lowest total tonight, sitting at 6.5 runs right now. Lance Lynn, very marginal favorite, minus 110. Assume that's just because he's the home pitcher, but Francisco Liriano is obviously my preferred option. This is a St. Louis team that has really struggled against left-handed pitchers this season. In fact, they're ranked 23rd in the league with 23.1% strikeout rate as well, which is tied actually with the Cubs. I mean, this is a team that really struggles against southpaws. Obviously, they're more healthy than they have been at other times this season, but for me, I think Liriano is head and shoulders above Lance Lynn. Got to like the matchup more. Strikeouts should be there as well. His last 2 games, though, he's only struck out 8 batters, has struggled just a little bit, but he does have the consistency, 53.4% ground ball rate, which is the highest on the slate tonight, 0.77 home runs per 9, 27.6% strikeout rate, among the best in just about every category on tonight's slate. So for me, he's my top pitching option. You don't feel like he's anything close to a lock for a win. Neither one of these guys are, obviously. So if you're looking for a guy who's more likely to get the win, good luck. You're going to be looking at another slate because there really are no significant favorites here. Another option that I'm looking at, Steven Strasburg, actually, the biggest favorite on the night at minus 130, and he's pitching at San Francisco against Ryan Vogelsong. Gusty wind blowing out to center, 10 to 15 miles an hour, so maybe it affects a little bit. Shouldn't be a whole lot, but Strasburg obviously came back from his injury. First start, 7 innings, 3 hits, 12 Ks against Colorado. Incredible performance there. Just give up 1 earned run. So you got to like him as a tournament option. But this is also a San Francisco team that's 4th best in the league against right-handed pitching and had the 5th lowest strikeout rate against right-handed pitching. So it's not a good matchup for him. But as we know, when he's in good form, he's one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. But we know when he's bad, he can actually get rocked. So that's why he's a GPP option for me. Garrett Richards is an okay option against Kansas City. I don't mind him. He's a guy who's been fairly consistent recently. Get some strikeouts too, 18 strikeouts over his last 2 games. The problem here, as always, is Kansas City just does not strike out. And a minus 120 favorite, 8-run total. You expect that he'll be getting some run support here, especially from the lefties in his lineup. Hint, hint, Jeremy Guthrie on the mound on the other side. But for me, I prefer the other 3 options above him. Lance Lynn as well against the Pirates. You don't like the matchup for him against the Pirates as much as Liriano against the Cardinals. Pittsburgh right around league average, slightly above against right-handed pitching. And as a whole, they're not a great offensive team, but there are some bats. Gregory Polanco's on fire. Andrew McCutchen, Starling Marte. Definitely some guys that you worry about a little bit in that lineup. You got some power with Pedro Alvarez. So for me, like I said, Liriano, my top option. Strasburg is going to be my GPP option. Looking at Lance Lynn. Other guys, I'm really not looking at Trevor Bauer too much against the Yankees. Has pitched well recently, but this is a Yankees team that struggled in 2 straight games. Trevor Bauer, as we know, walks a lot of batters, nearly 10%. So he's a guy that I just don't have a lot of faith in tonight. He's an okay GPP option because he does have upside, but really not a guy that I'm going out of my way to target here. And then as you're looking at other guys, really nobody else stands out. I'm trying to pick on just about all these other guys. Only other one you could consider would be Nathan Eovaldi at $7,400, but really struggles with lefties. We saw a righty-loaded lineup for Cleveland yesterday. Don't expect that to be the case tonight against Eovaldi. So maybe if I'm making a lot of tournament lineups, I'll probably throw him in a couple of them, but that's about it for me. And I guess I'll throw in Ryan Vogelsong as well. His biggest weakness is against lefties, and he's coming back out of the bullpen now to make this start. So he's a guy that, he started his last game and was in the bullpen for looks like about 3 weeks before that. So he's a guy that struggles with the long ball, struggles with lefties, but pretty good against right-handed batters. And this is a Washington team that's really struggled recently, so I don't mind him if you're making a lot of lineups either. Catcher options tonight, there's not a lot. Buster Posey's $4,300 against Steven Strasburg. As we know, Posey mashes lefties and righties. Really expensive price for him, but you're obviously not paying over $10K for any pitchers because there aren't any over $10K. So Posey, I think a good tournament option, not a guy I'll be playing in cash. The guys that I'm looking at paying up for in cash, he has Monty Grandal and his great numbers from the left side of the plate against righties against the rookie Sampson. I like him at $3,200. Brian McCann against Trevor Bauer. Bauer's actually decent against left-handed batters this season, 305 WOBA allowed, but Brian McCann is a guy with a ton of power. You obviously prefer him at Yankee Stadium, but as we know, when Trevor Bauer is wild and giving up too many free passes, he can certainly be a train wreck, so I'm looking at him a little bit. Really nobody cheap that stands out to me at all. You can look at a guy like Wilson Ramos against Ryan Vogelsong if he gets a decent lineup spot, just because he's a punt. Like I said, Vogelsong is pretty good against righties, so not a guy that I'm going out of my way to play, but I think he's an okay option. Other than that, you can look at the Reds' cheap catchers. Brian Pena is $2,300 against Matt Latos, and Tucker Barnhart's $2,300. You assume that it'll be Pena in there, but either way, whichever one of those guys in there, I think probably my favorite punt on the night at catcher. First base options. There's quite a few here. Mark Teixeira takes that ridiculous 333 ISO against righties to Cleveland and Progressive Field today, so I love him. I think my cash game play, there's really two guys that are the same price that I'm looking at. Joey Votto's the guy I'll be going with, $3,500. He's absolutely on fire since the All-Star break, batting over 400. He's walked 31 times in his last 25 games. Just gets on base a ton. Hit a homer last night late. Gotta like him. Also on the other side of that one, Adrian Gonzalez against Kevius Sampson. Take your pick with those two guys. Like I said, I prefer Votto. I think both guys are in great spots, though. Brandon Belt, if you're trying to pick on Strasburg, he's a guy who has significant upside. He's got 5 homers in his last 9 games. Had that double dong game a couple games ago. Obviously, with the power there, like we mentioned, the wind blowing out just a little bit there in San Francisco as well. Albert Pujols, I like against Jeremy Guthrie. Guthrie's the guy that a lot of people like to pick on, and I love to pick on him too. Much worse against lefties, but not very good against righties either. 336 WOBA allowed. So I like Albert Pujols a good deal. If you're looking for cheap guys, CJ Cron at 2,600 in that same matchup, or Pedro Alvarez at 2,700 against Lance Lynn, I think are good tournament options. Carlos Santana is a guy, switch hitter, facing off against Anthony Eovaldi. I mentioned his struggles with lefties. 373 on the season. And Santana's starting to hit the ball pretty well recently. Got RBIs in 4 of his last 5 games. Been patient at the plate, so I like him at 3,200 as well. Second base is a barren position today. You got Brandon Phillips, your most expensive healthy option. He's a fine option. Been solid over his last probably about 20 games. He's got 4 multi-hit games in his last 9. A homer in there. Not a lot of power at this stage in his career, but he's a guy that's going to get on base. And Matt Latos is an above-average pitcher, but not a guy you're shying away from, so I like him. Neil Walker from the left side of the plate if you're targeting Lance Lynn, which you're not trying to do outside of tournaments, but he's an okay option. Anthony Rendon, though, is the guy I'll probably be going to more often than not. $2,800. As we know, he's better against lefties than righties. Same scenario for the other side with Ryan Vogelsong, but I like Anthony Rendon here because, I mean, he's cheap and he's too good of a hitter to be $2,800. Vogelsong, with those home run struggles, 1.28 per 9 this year. I like him. And then your cheap guys are going to be Johnny Giavotella against Jeremy Guthrie and Enrique Hernandez, $2,500 in his matchup with Kevius Sampson. Those are the cheap guys that I'm looking towards tonight. Third base options. You always love to play Matt Carpenter, but not against the lefty. Tournament-only option for me against Francisco Liriano. And Carpenter's not bad against lefties, but not a guy I'm rushing out to play. The trio of guys I'm really looking at here, the hot corner, Alex Rodriguez against Trevor Bauer, Matt Duffy in tournaments against Steven Strasburg, and then Todd Frazier, $3,100. We saw how bad he was for right about a month after the All-Star break, but turning around over his last 2 games, he's got 2 doubles and a homer in those 2 games there, $3,100, still too cheap of a price for a guy with the kind of skills that he has. And then if you're going looking for a cheap guy here, not a whole lot that stands out. You can look at Mike Moustakas. He does have cheap power for $2,400 against Garrett Richards, but Garrett Richards is the guy that keeps the ball on the ground a great deal, 53.1%. So not a guy you're targeting, but if you're looking for cheap upside, I think Moustakas is the way to go. Also, Lonnie Chisnall you can look at if he's in the lineup as a $2,300 lefty against Anthony Eovaldi. Shortstop options, I like both the Cleveland options, Francisco Lindor, Jose Ramirez. Take your pick. Been a tough decision between the two recently. Jose has 4 straight games with multiple hits. Lindor, slightly more power. So I don't think you can go wrong with either one. If you can't decide, they're only $100 difference. Maybe chop your cash games in half. But I think those are your 2 options that are the best. Ian Desmond is your power upside at the top there. 3 homers in his last 7. Facing off against Ryan Vogelsong, you got to like him. Brandon Crawford, once again, you're going to look at these Giants bats in tournaments against Strasburg. We know Crawford has big-time upside. And then Johnny Peralta, if you're not playing Francisco Liriano, this guy kills left-handed pitching. He's only $2,600, just way too cheap there. And then, as always, your cheap option, Alcides Escobar, $2,200. Not a guy with much upside, but you know what you're going to get most nights out of him. And Eugenio Suarez is the swerve off him at $2,400. Outfield, a lot of really good options out here. You got Bryce Harper. He is incredible against right-handed pitching. And like I mentioned, Ryan Vogelsong is terrible against lefties. Bryce Harper at $4,600. Short slate. Got to be, I would imagine, the most highly owned player at any position. He's my top option at that price. Mike Trout, obviously, a great option against Jeremy Guthrie as well, but everything going in Bryce Harper's favor there. So I like him a ton tonight. Other guys, Andrew McCutchen in your tournaments. Michael Brantley, probably my next favorite player. He's been absolutely locked in. He's got 5 doubles and 11 hits in his last 4 games. Got the day off yesterday with CC Sabathia on the mound, but back now. Mentioned Eovaldi struggles against lefties. You gotta love him. Lorenzo Cain, I always love. Garrett Richards, not a matchup you're looking excitedly at, but certainly Lorenzo Cain is hitting everyone right now. Cole Calhoun, lefty with power against Jeremy Guthrie. Gonna want some exposure to him tonight. $3,400 just seems way too cheap. And then Gregory Polanco, kind of touched on him earlier, $3,100. I don't care who this guy's facing right now. I'm getting him into my lineups, especially cash games on a short slate. You imagine that he's going to be pretty highly owned. All he's done in the last couple games, 4.75, 5.75, 5.25. I mean, the guy's just incredibly consistent. Love him. Once again, Gardner, Ellsbury, both those guys struggling. Both of them just over 3K. I mean, you got to like their potential. They just both been really struggling. And then Jay Bruce at 3K. You're looking his way for some cheaper power. As you're looking down, Billy Hamilton gives you some upside at $2,600 as far as stolen bases go, but you don't love him. Jock Peterson, really struggling at the plate, but we know he's capable of sending one out. And then you got your LA Angel lefties, David Murphy, $2,500, probably my favorite of that group there. And then once again, Shane Victorino should be leading off, $2,200. You're certainly considering him. And that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.